Yo, welcome back everybody to a brand new video here on the second channel, and today I have my predictions for NAIC, what I think is going to go down at the tournament this year. All my predictions are going to be in this video. I'm going to talk about what decks I think have the best chance of winning the tournament, making top 8, top 32, and then after I talk about my predictions, I'm going to do my meta percentage predictions here as to where I think each deck will fall in day one of the tournament. It is going to be the biggest tournament. There's almost like 4,000 people in NAIC. It's going to be a big one for sure, and I'm really excited to compete tomorrow in the tournament. Hopefully, I see some of y'all at NAIC. Of course, this video going up on the check-in day of the tournament, so maybe I've already seen some of y'all. And let me know your predictions for NAIC. What do you think is going to go down at the tournament this year in the comment section below? If you're new here to the second channel, make sure to subscribe down below also and leave a like in the video and all that good stuff. I greatly appreciate it. So let's get into it. So we'll start off with Grimmsnarl, which is like the new big deck of the tournament. Grimmsnarl is looking like it's going to be the big archetype to come out of Destined Rivals, and it does have a good chance of doing well. I think Grimmsnarl going into NAIC is going to be a very popular deck. I'll talk about where I think it'll land on the meta predictions on the day one graph, but I do think Grimmsnarl is going to be big. It's going to be popular. It's definitely a deck you do not want to take a bad matchup going into this tournament, in my opinion. It's going to be popular, even though I think the deck could have the potential to like fall off after NAIC, like going into Worlds. Who knows if this deck will actually be in a better spot, but I do think this deck is going to be a very big one for this tournament. At the very least, it is going to scare off Gardavore's meta percentage a little bit, and we'll talk about Gardavore in just a sec. But yeah, I think Grimmsnarl has a good chance of winning the tournament. It's kind of like Dragapult. You're just this aggressive spread deck that puts a lot of damage on the board. You have a lot of counterplay with Monkey Dory Frostlass. The Devo obviously is a very important card in the deck. So yeah, very good chance that Grimmsnarl does well at NAIC. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if it won the tournament. Definitely, I think Grimmsnarl should make top 8. Even though there's like a good chance that top players will not be on Grimmsnarl this weekend, I still think it'll do well enough where 100% one. I mean, if it doesn't make like ASIM, at least one in top 8 for sure. Now, Gardavore, I don't think is going anywhere. I know Gardavore is going to be less popular for this tournament because it's, you know, kind of scary versus Grim, right? That Grimmsnarl matchup is not great. So I think Gardavore will drop off a little bit in play, but I think it'll still be very good. Honestly, if you're going to go deep into this tournament, there's a very good chance you're going to hit Gardavore. Like, I don't think that this deck is going to evaporate. I think good players will still be playing it. Gardavore is still a very tried and true strong deck. You can almost do whatever you want. Like, if it sets up a really good board, it's usually impossible to beat, even if you're playing Grimmsnarl. Like, there's two big dark Pokemon in the format right now that are, in my opinion, going to be fairly popular, and I don't think Gardavore is going to be that scared of these two archetypes. So, Gardavore is still really good. It almost won NAIC last year. Honestly, would it be surprised if Gardavore did the run back and almost won again? I mean, we just saw Gardavore like dominate the last firm, right, in the Journey Together meta. And there's a good chance Gardavore is going to continue that trend and do well at Worlds and NAIC. Gardy will probably make top 8 at NAIC. I think it's a safe lock. We're going to see one Gardavore in top 8 at NAIC this year. Very good chance that does happen. Who knows? Maybe it'll win the tournament or make finals again like it did last year. Dragapult, I don't think is going anywhere. I think the deck is still going to be very heavily played. In fact, I think it might be the most popular deck at the tournament. That's my prediction anyways. Like, this is a deck where I don't think, like, it's weird because the deck is technically worse right now, but it's still going to be very popular. And I think that alone will give players enough reason to want to still have a good matchup in a Dragapult. Like, I don't think you should roll up this tournament with a deck that loses to Pult. It's still going to be the most played deck in the room. A lot of people are still probably going to play the deck coming off of last format. They're just used to it by now, or even the Prismatic meta. Like, they're just used to this deck, so they're going to continue to play it. It's not the worst deck for this tournament. Like, I think it's still good. Now, I do think that the best way to play it is going to be with the Dusknoirs. The Ghosts are kind of like the new wave right now on Dragapult. I think if you're playing Dragapult without Ghosts for NAIC, you might be trolling because you're going to have a better time in both Gardavore and Grimmsnarl, which I think are going to be popular. Also, your Raging Bolt matchup is going to be better too, which is another deck that I definitely expect to be popular. So Pult will probably still be the most played deck in the room, and that's also coming off of like the different variants of the deck. Like the Dusknoir build, I think is the best way to play it, but I think straight Pult will still be people. I don't think it's going to be heavy played, but straight Pult will still be out there, and then obviously we have Pultzard. Not really going to count Dragapult Goldengo. That's a Goldengo deck first. But yeah, Dragapult's going to be good. Still popular. It's not as well positioned as it was before, but it's still a great deck, and it's still a very skill-intensive deck. This is a deck where I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the top players going to the tournament are going to be on it. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if, like, the Australians brought it. I wouldn't be surprised if, like, Hedrick brought it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, good players are going to play it this weekend. Yeah, just, again, if you're going far in the tournament, you're going to hit Pult no matter what. Like, the top players are most likely playing this deck. I'm going to be honest with you. All right, next up is the straight Pult build, which I think is definitely falling off. I don't think it's as good anymore because you're going to take a worse matchup into Gardavore and Grimmsnarl, where if you want to beat those decks, you probably have to play the Ghosts. I do think this deck does still, like, do okay across the field, I guess, like, in a way. Like, you're still doing a little bit better into Charizard, Dragapult, or Gulango, obviously, if you're going to keep the Genesect in the deck, but I just don't think this deck is well-positioned. If I'm playing Dragapult this weekend, Straight Pult is, like, at the bottom of my tier list of decks I would play with Dragapult in them. It would be at the very bottom. It's just not very good right now, I think. It just doesn't have a good matchup into, like, Grim, Guardy, and Raging Bull. Like, you can slide Shaman in the deck to fix the Bolt matchup a bit, but that matchup, I think, is still chalked. Like, this deck definitely is on the downswing right now. I think we have to go back to playing Ghosts in the deck going forward. Then we got Raging Bolt. This is a deck that I think is going to be very good for this tournament. I have Raging Bolt high up on my tier list of good decks for this tournament. I mean, Raging Bolt has always been considered a meme, or like, not a meme, but like kind of like one of those like noob decks. But it's not a noob deck anymore. This deck is very real, very strong, very powerful, has a good matchup versus Dragapult and good matchup versus Grimmsnarl. It's actually like pretty well positioned overall. I do think Shaman hurts it a little bit, but the deck is still really good. Raging Bolt is kind of like the new version of Terabox, where you're using the Noctowl engine to do all these crazy plays. You have 1 kill potential, you have 1 prize board state potential, you have a lot of really good 1 prize attackers in general. You can punish players for not putting Shaman in their deck by still using Raging Bolt. This 1 prize 1, right? You still have Iron Leaves, which is now going to be probably a staple in the deck going forward, just to help even more versus the Grimmsnarl matchup. Yeah, I mean, Raging Bolt did win Milwaukee. It's a deck that almost won the Santiago Regionals. Like, I definitely can see Raging Bolt making top 8 this weekend. Very good chance it does happen. I think a lot of Raging Bolt warriors are going to this tournament. I think this deck is easily going to make a top 8 at NAIC. I'm going to lock that prediction in. We're going to see 1 Raging Bolt in top 8 at NAIC. Maybe even 2. It could even win the tournament. Like, honestly, every deck I just mentioned, Raging Bolt, Dragapult, Gardavore, and Grimmsnarl, they all have a pretty good chance of winning NAIC. I wouldn't be surprised if any one of those 4 decks won the tournament this weekend. All right. Joltic Box is next on my predictions. I think this is another very strong deck going into this tournament, but it's also one of those, like, very straightforward type decks where players are turned off by playing it just because of how, like, simple it is, but sometimes simplicity is what you want. And this deck does crush Grimmsnarl, and I think it's pretty good into Dragapult. Guardy is close, and then obviously Raging Bolt is easily your worst matchup, but if you want to just have a straightforward, like, go-to, straight, easy-to-play deck, like, this is probably the best deck to bring to the tournament, to be honest with you. Like, you're going to win a lot of games by just randomly cheesing people with Iron Hands and Pikachu. Yeah, I think it's a pretty decent deck for the tournament. I don't think it's the best deck for the tournament. If you're looking to win NAIC, Joltic Box is probably not on the table, but if you want to make an easy day 2, if you want to, you know, maybe even make an easy top 64 to get, like, prizing and boxes, probably play this deck. But I don't think the deck is, like, as good. It's good, but I just, it's not going to win the tournament, is what I'm trying to say. Though, I wouldn't be surprised if 1 Joltic Box at least snuck its way into top 8. It most likely will happen. All right, next up is Flareon. This is a weird one. I think this deck is actually really good for NAIC. This is actually one of the best decks to bring to the tournament, in my opinion, if you know how to play the deck really well. The problem is this deck is hard to play. It's not very easy to pick up. It has a lot of lines. It's a very complicated deck. You have to think ahead a lot when you're playing it. It's a lot more complicated than, like, even Dragapult and Lost Box were in the past. So this is a deck that, if you're somebody who's been accustomed to playing it for the past little while, bring it to the tournament. I think it's actually a fantastic play for this tournament because it can beat Grimmsnarl. Your Dragapult matchup and Guardy matchups are always, like, kind of weird, but Guardy, I think, is going to be a little less popular than it was in the past tournament, so that's really good for the deck. Yeah, Flareon's pretty good. Maybe makes top 8. Definitely ASIM, maybe top 8. Probably going to happen. I wouldn't be surprised if one of them snuck in. Next up is Gulango. I think the Dragapult one is the best way to play it right now. Pengo feels like a pretty powerful deck right now. I wouldn't be surprised if Pengo did well. This is a deck that has been getting a lot of hype actually in the past, like, week or so. I wouldn't be surprised if it actually makes Gulango be very popular in this tournament. I actually don't think Gulango is, like, the greatest play in this tournament. I think Flareon is a better play than Gulango overall. Gulango's still good, though. It has a good well, if they're not playing Genesect, obviously. It has a good Grim matchup, in my opinion, or at least the Grimmsnarl matchup is okay. Your Guardy matchup is one of the main selling points about playing Gulango, is it usually just crushes Gardavore. But Gulango does have a lot more bad matchups, like Flareon, for example. Good deck for this tournament, bad matchup for Gulango. Raging Bolt is another matchup I actually don't think is great for Gulango. Raging Bolt usually is a lot faster than you, and they can run you over and 2-2-2 you a lot more easily than you can 2-2-2 them, I find. So Gulango, I think, is a good deck, but I don't think it's the best play for the tournament. I don't think it's going to win NAIC. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw maybe one Gulango in top 8, maybe one in top 16. It's still a good play for the tournament. It's not a bad day 2 deck, in my opinion. Like, a deck to make day 2 with could be Gulango. But I don't know. It's just tough because it does have a lot of bad matchups. Like, Joltic Box is shaky. I would even say, like, something like the Typhlosion deck, that pops out of nowhere. That could be pretty bad. Like, definitely a deck where it has a lot of glaring weaknesses. It's strong, and it's usually pretty good into the top decks, but it's a little shaky. And I still am not sold on the Raging Bolt matchup. I think Bolt is just bad. Also, if Gulango keeps getting a lot of hype going into NAIC, there's a chance we might start seeing Genesect make its way back into some decks now, which is not good for Gulango in my opinion. All right, next up is Pultzard. This is the second best way to play Dragapult right now. I really like this deck actually right now. I think this deck's pretty solid. If you want to play Dragapult to NAIC, but you don't want to play Dusknoir, honestly, Pultzard's pretty good. Charizard is really good at having its Gardavore, and pretty decent against Grimmsnarl, I find, too. Mainly because, like, if they don't respect the Charizard, usually you can sweep them pretty easily with Burning Darkness. Yeah, I like Charizard Pult quite a bit. It's a pretty strong deck. It's fairly straightforward. It does have some lines with Hawlucha and Monkey Dory. For the most part, though, it is kind of a straightforward deck. I think it's the best way to play Charizard in this tournament. Charizard and Grimmsnarl, both big Dark-type EX Pokemon that both seem pretty good for NAIC. Definitely don't sleep on this deck. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Pulsar do well at NAIC. Then I want to mention some other decks like Archaladon. This deck's kind of cool. I've been seeing it float around in the online tournament scene. I've tried it myself. I've even played against it a couple times and got bodied by it. It's actually fairly strong. The ability to abuse Venture Bomb is kind of cool. You got Monkey Dory, which is nice to have against Grim and Dragapult. Yeah, you just have this like big 300 HP wall in the active spot that just kind of like does a lot of crazy things. But yeah, definitely a good deck. I'm going to be surprised if we saw some Archaladon do well in this tournament. All right, now let's talk about some of the, I guess, more underrated decks. One of them I do like is Typhlosion. So this is a deck that we're waiting to see a really good 60 come out, or a really good list, or it's just waiting for that one big finish to pop off. Typhlosion could do well at NAIC. This definitely could happen. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Typhlosion make top 32. We'll have to see what the best way to play the deck is and, like, the most common way it's going to be played. But I could see Typhlosion do well. It's definitely on the brink. Like, it does have good matchups in my opinion. Like, outside of maybe a rough Guardy matchup, maybe a shaky, like, you're just bad in, like, the big stage 2 decks, but it's still pretty solid. Then you had Mega Iron Hands. I'm a big fan of this deck. I really like this deck. This is a deck that if I committed more time to, I would maybe put on my list of what to bring to NAIC. I like Mega quite a bit. It's a personal favorite Pokemon of mine. Has a good Grimmsnarl matchup. The Iron Hands gives you some better matchups too across the board. Yamega's a fairly straightforward and a strong card. This deck is really cool. It's won an online tournament, so it's definitely like decent. I want to see one of these make day 2 for sure. 100%. Garchomp is another interesting deck here I wanted to mention real quick. One of those decks where I think that people just haven't figured out the best way to play it, but I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Garchomp have a good run at NAIC and maybe do well enough to make a top 32. Like, Garchomp cashing at NAIC could be possible. This card feels like it's one card short or one breakthrough away from actually being like a pretty solid play in our format, in my opinion. It does share a weakness to Grass, though, which is not great. Kind of gets caught in the crossfire with Grimmsnarl. Another deck that I think we're waiting for like a good list to come out is Team Rocket's Mewtwo. This deck feels like there's something to it. We just haven't been able to crack the code yet on the Team Rocket's Mewtwo deck, though I would like to see this deck do well. Another deck that I want to see make cash at NAIC. Now, the hype with this deck is cool. Will it make top 8, though? I can't really see it in the new decks. Out of all the new decks making top 8, I would probably rather give it to Typhlosion over Mewtwo making top 8, but Mewtwo could make top 8, I guess. I could definitely see it in top 32. Maybe top 16 if we're being a little too generous here, but top 32, Mewtwo, it's on the table for sure. All right, next up I wanted to mention Hobo Box, which is like another new archetype that's been popping up. This one does actually feel like there is something to it. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody actually top 32 with this deck. This is a top 32 deck in the making, in my opinion. I think we're just waiting for a good 60 to come out, the right list, the right player giving the deck enough attention where it's actually positioned pretty well. Like, I don't think this deck is bad at all. This is a very real deck in my opinion. This actually could be the most realist of all the new decks, in all honesty, to come out of the new set. Because you do have a lot of type coverage, you get a toolbox of attackers, you can do a lot of things that other decks can't do, which I think is very good. The deck is kind of inconsistent. It's also a bit of a pile, but it's a really cool pile that I think we are waiting for somebody to crack this deck, because it definitely could make top 32. This deck is a top 32 in the making at NAIC, mark my words. Some other older archetypes like Roaring Moon could do well. I don't think the Duns build is as good anymore, but the Turbo one could be a bit better. I mean, Petron Donks are still very strong in my opinion, and I think you can still tease a lot of wins by donking with Petron. Still a very fast, aggressive deck that can win games due to its speed and stuff, so I wouldn't be surprised if we did see Roaring Moon do okay in the tournament. I don't think it's going to do as well as it did in the past format, because it did win a regional, but I don't think it's going to happen again. This deck feels a lot worse in this meta. This deck doesn't have a great Grimmsnarl matchup, which is kind of a problem. Terabox fell off completely. I don't think we're going to see Terabox do well this tournament. 1 or 2 in day 2 is probably going to happen. The thing is, if you're playing a deck like this, like, Terabox doesn't really change with the new set. There's no real new cards you would add to the deck. It's really just dodge Shaman. If you can dodge Shaman, you know, this deck isn't terrible, but dodging Shaman is not easy. I expect both Dragapult and Gardavore to play Shaman. Grimmsnarl, I'm 50-50 on playing Shaman. I would say Terabox maybe is okay in a Grimmsnarl, but we'll have to see on that. But I do think this deck's biggest op is Shaman. I think a deck that gets neutered harder by Shaman, though, is probably Zoroark. I really like this deck, but man, Shaman just kills it. Like, the whole gimmick of the deck is using stuff like Reshiram and Darmanitan, but now that Shaman's a thing, like, this deck I think is really bad now. So, sadly, I don't see Zoroark making day 2. I think if Shaman starts getting less popular, okay, sure, this deck might start doing well again, but for NAIC, this is just a bad deck to play, and I don't even know if we're going to see a Zoroark in day 2. I actually wouldn't be surprised if we saw a Terabox in day 2. There's more to this deck than just Wellspring Ogerpon. Not to mention, this deck still has a lot of power behind it, and it's still pretty solid, even though it does, you know, get bodied pretty hard by Shaman. But I wouldn't be surprised if we did see Terabox in day 2 over Zoroark. Like, wouldn't be surprised if even Terabox made top 64. There is a very real chance of that happening. And then finally, the wild card pick I have is Toedscruel. This deck's actually pretty good in my opinion. I think you beat Grimmsnarl, you should beat Dragapult, and outside of just a bad Guardy matchup, it's not a bad deck overall. Like, Guldengo's getting more popular, more reason to play the Toedscruel. You're just a really cool beatstick grass deck that has some very interesting interactions with the 2 different Toedscruels in the format. And you do farm Grimmsnarl, which is really cool. So yeah, this deck's really nice. I want to see it do well at NAIC. I think it's not a bad play. If you're somebody who wanted to play the deck in the past format after seeing it do well in Portland, honestly, it's still a pretty good, if not even a better time to play than right now, especially if Gardevore's play rate is going to dwindle a little bit. The only other deck you got to watch out for is probably just Flareon. And maybe Raging Bolt. But I think you can beat Raging Bolt if you can 2-2-2 them, which is possible in my opinion. Those are all the decks I have predicted on the video today. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if any of the 4 big decks won NAIC, but let's move on now to my predictions here as to where decks will fall in the day 1 graph. So let's shrink this a little bit so you can see a bit better. So we'll start with Gardavore. I think it'll probably be around like 9 to 10%. We'll put it on 10% for the higher side of things. This is, again, 4,000 players in this tournament. But yeah, Gardavore being 10%, it's possible. I think it'll be around like 8 to 10% in that range. Probably 9% in the middle is a better place to put it, but we'll put it at 10% for now. I think Raging Bolt, very good chance this is like, honestly, like 14 to 15% of the room is going to be on Raging Bolt. This is a deck gaining a lot of hype right now that I would not be surprised if Raging Bolt randomly was like a 14% meta share, maybe even 15%. It's a very powerful archetype. And while it isn't the same as it was before, where it's as easy and simple to play and as cheesy, the deck is still very broken. Yeah, like, if you're somebody who played Terabox last format, pivoting over to Raging Bolt isn't a bad idea. Now, let's talk about Grimmsnarl. How popular is Grimmsnarl going to be? To be honest, I can see being around the same percentage of Raging Bolt. It's a new deck. People are just wanting to play the new deck for this tournament. We did see something like last year at NAIC where Dragapult came out. Didn't really do as well. We saw like Dragapult Charizard was a better deck than like Dragapult and stuff. But I definitely could see Grimmsnarl kind of having that same trajectory where like, super hype for NAIC. People are going to tech for it. People are going to play it. Will it flop? I don't know. I think Grimmsnarl is strong enough to not flop, but yeah, 14%. It'll be popular. Even if we don't see the deck do as well, there's a chance it does happen. It might flop a little bit. It'll still be very popular. Like 14%. I think it's probably going to be around the same as Raging Bolt, if I'm going to be honest with you. Dragapult, Dusknoir, like Dragapult in general, pretty good chance. You know, we got like a good 17% of the meta here. It might not be as high as it was before, where it was like 20+%. That's not going to happen. But like, I definitely would say like 17, 18%, probably just under 20% is a safe place to put Dragapult in terms of play rate for NAIC. Again, a lot of people are still going to play it to this tournament. It's still not a bad deck. Like, I think it's still very good. It doesn't like flat out lose to any deck in the meta. If you're going to play the Ghosts again, you're slightly improving your Guardy and Grimmsnarl matchup, especially your Guardy matchup. That's a big one. Flareon will probably be around like 6% of the meta. I think this is still a really good deck to bring to the tournament. Just, it's a deck you have to be very confident in playing. Again, it's hard to play. There's a lot of lines, a lot of situations you can be put in where you don't know what you're doing. One wrong misplay can derail the entire game of this deck. Like, Flareon is not an easy deck to play. So, 6% I think is safe. It's more of a deck where we're going to more likely see, like, top players playing it, in my opinion. Something like, what's next? Guldengo's a good one. Dango will probably be on, like, 9%. Probably just under Guardy's play rate. Maybe even a bit higher. I don't know. 8% feels a little low for Guldengo. Give it 9%. I can see it maybe being in double digits percentage-wise, but I'll give it 9% for now. The deck's cool, but, you know, would you rather play a better deck above it? You know what I mean? Like, 9% is pretty fair for the deck, I think. All right, next up is Joltic Box. Probably going to be, like, also, like, a 9%er. I can see Gulango and Joltic Box being in the same play rate, percentage-wise. Very good chance that does happen. Joltic and Gulango both probably will be in that, like, 9%, maybe 10% range of popularity. I can see Guardy being more popular than Joltic Box. Like, more people are more confident in Gardavore than actually Joltic, even if Gardavore will dwindle a little bit in popularity. Some other decks here, I mean, everything else a bit more lower on the list, like Terabox, like 1%. Ethan's Typhlosion, maybe like a 2-3% deck, just because it's actually, like, not bad, but I still don't see enough players actually bringing it to this tournament over any other deck. Again, we're going to an NAIC. We're not going to a regional. More on the line here, folks. Rocket's Mewtwo, same, like 2% of the room maybe playing it, maybe at Mo. That's being a little generous there. Garchomp, 1%. Pulsard, I guess if we're talking about Pulsard, it's probably going to be like a 3 to 4%er. In total, like 3 to 4% probably is where I'd put it. Probably still under Flareon. Honestly, 5% might be a bit more fair to the deck. Yeah, I'll give it a 5% meta share. Like, if we're just straight up talking, like, if somehow we had the statistics how many people were playing Dragapult Charizard this tournament, because they're probably just going to combine the two in the graphic, right? This will be a part of Dragapult's graphic. But if we're splitting the two, I could see Pulsar being around 5% of the meta. It's got enough, like, hype and respect right now where it's actually not bad. It's definitely a decent deck to bring to the tournament. Roaring Moon, 2%. Charizard itself, like, 2%, I guess. Charizard by itself sucks. Like, just play with Dragapult, man. And then everything else, like 6% other, I think, would probably be where I would finish off this meta predictions. I would go 6% of the meta to other. But there you go. Those are my predictions for NAIC. This is what I think the day one graphic's going to look like. I think we'll see a lot of Dragapult, a lot of Raging Bolt, a lot of Grimmsnarl, decent chunk of Guardy, and then like Gulango, Joltic Box will round out that like lower echelon. We could see like Archaladon, I guess, would be like a 3%er. It's not on here though, but I would put Archaladon on like 3%. I just mentioned that deck. Some of these new archetypes, I don't think will be that popular. Like Ethan's Typhlosion, 2 to 3%, maybe a little too generous. I could even see like Rocket's Mewtwo being lower than 2%. There's just like, there's not enough refined list yet, but you know what? If somebody has a good run with any of these decks, boom, next thing you know, Typhlosion goes from 2% of the meta to like 7% overnight. It's possible. Definitely going to happen, in my opinion. Those are my meta predictions for NAIC. Let me know what you think of them down below. What deck do you think is going to win NAIC this year? Like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if any of the decks mentioned in the top 4 will win the tournament. Dragapult, Raging Bull, Grimm, Gardavore all have a good chance of winning the tournament. But stuff like Joltic Box, Gulango, Flareon, these are all decks I think will make top 8. And I think we'll see some of these newer archetypes like Typhlosion, Charizard, Yanmega, Charizard, that's not a new deck, Mewtwo, Yanmega, stuff like that, will maybe make cash this weekend. I don't think they'll make top 8, but making cash is possible, for sure. Let me know what you think of them down below. Catch you all in another video very soon here on the second channel. Bye-bye.